All right, it is February 5th. That's a Thursday, 2026. I am headed to see Phil Delisle at Genesis Tattoo to finish my sleeve. This has been a long time coming. It is my story. It is something I'm literally going to wear on my sleeve. Not because of anything that I did. I may be the main character in the story, but at the bottom line is this story is about what God can do in somebody's life. Phil's already done the outside of my arm, the inside of my arm, and my chest piece here. I'll show that to you another time. And now he's going to complete the story. I got to complete the story. My story is something that is just probably the biggest story of my life, other than turning over my life to Jesus. It's the biggest thing likely that's ever happened in my life. And unfortunately, it was something extremely tragic. That being said, a lot of people ask me, they say, well, wait a minute, you went through all this hell, you went through this injustice. Why don't you just leave that behind and just move on with your life? You're doing great, you own your own company, etc. You know, everything's going smooth. Yeah, everything's going really great. God has fully restored me and my family. However, this is the reason I refuse to leave it behind. The big reason is this. My biggest fear is not remembering all the things that I went through. The pain, the anguish, the injustice, all of it. That's not my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that I'm going to forget that situation, bury it under the rug, and I'm going to forget what God did in the middle of all of it. And I'm going to take him for granted yet once again. And so I have decided to make my story permanent on my arm. I will never forget. And so all of this is not only because I want to tell my story because it gives glory to God, but I don't ever want to forget all the pain, all the anguish, the injustice, you name it. It's a long story. I don't want to ever forget. I don't ever want that pain and that suffering in my memory to go stale. Because the moment that that pain and that suffering goes stale, so will my gratitude. I've got no one to thank more than the Lord for pulling my family and I through everything that we went through to this other side. So today is a big day. It took me about 4.5 years to decide on this entire story. So it's not like I'm just popping into the tattoo. I think I'm gonna get a tattoo shop. Hey, no judgment if that's what you do. Okay, that's fine. For me, a tattoo, something permanent, it must have not just meaning, but it must have vital, life-giving, in here meaning. And that's what my tattoos are. So, hey, here we are. I'm gonna go grab me and Phil some breakfast sandwiches. You never want a tattoo artist on an empty stomach. Trust me, okay? Phil is the best, Genesis Tattoo. Look him up. He's up here in Washington, just north of Vancouver. He is fantastic. I'm excited to go see him. It's tattoo day. I am ready to roll. Let's do this. Long time coming. I'll keep you posted. All right, Phil said I'm going to be on my stomach all day. So we're going to get started. I'm here. Here's his little shop. Here's our little space. And this dude is the best, man. He's awesome. We're going to get started. Look at all this. I think he thinks he's going to get dehydrated. Look at all that water. This guy's crazy, but he's a good brother in the Lord. All right. All right, so this is before. All right, we're at day 2 of 2 of finishing the old sleeve. I've had my chest done, I've had the entire outer arm done, the entire inner bicep done, and now this outside forearm. I can feel the heat coming off of it this morning. Let me tell you this, man. This outer forearm was the most painful tattoo session I've ever had. Think, well, maybe the chest will be pretty bad. Yeah, the nipple area is really bad. That's a scale of pain 10 out of 10. The inner bicep, that was pretty painful. Okay, even the outer arm had some spaces. Every tattoo placement, they have their sensitive spots, and everybody's a little bit different, right? What may hurt one person in one area may not hurt somebody in the other. So I've heard a lot of people say the outer forearm's not that big of a deal. Well, for me, for some whatever reason, it was a big deal. Excuse me. I was on my stomach for like 8.5 hours. 8.5 hours. And this was extremely painful from beginning to end. But as you can see by the results, worth it. Absolutely worth it. I had the best tattoo artist in the world, Phil Delisle, Genesis Tattoo, up here in the state of Washington. Well, this morning, I'm getting ready to pick up some breakfast sandwiches. You don't want Phil tattooing on an empty stomach, you know what I'm saying? Go on the inside. And what that is this is dedicated to my family and everything that God brought us through. And now that the place of where we are now, it represents restoration. And in another video, I'm going to give you the entire story about what all of this means. All of this is one big story. But anyway, that's another video. I'm going to grab some breakfast sandwiches. We're going to get right back over to Phil's house, and we are going to get back to ink. Let's do this. Thank you, breakfast sandwich. Hey, what's up, everybody? Well, the tattoo is complete. The sleeve is complete. I want to tell you a quick story about that, though. So yesterday, I think it was around 5 o'clock, 5:30 p.m., Phil was finally finished. Everything's done. Chest, outer arm, inner arm. And in these last two sessions that when I started making these videos, he did the outer forearm and then the inner forearm. And that completes the project. As many of you know, I started sketching this whole process out as I was sitting in prison innocent. And so I was sentenced to 12.5 years. 2.5 years in, they end up sending me home. Everything's reversed. Everything's dismissed. And eventually everything is expunged. And that was the story of my injustice, anguish, pain, and my own personal living hell that my family and I and my friends, we all went through it together. And so I wanted to commemorate what God did in the middle of all of that in this sleeve. It took me about 4.5 years to sketch out. In fact, I got all my tattoos after prison. It's kind of crazy, huh? Nonetheless, when he got done with the tattoo yesterday at about 5:30 p.m., I was going to drive all the way home. This was up in state of Washington. I was going to drive all the way back home down to Damascus, Oregon. I was just too tired. I was too sore. I really didn't feel like driving. So I thought I was going to get some dinner. And so I went to the Fat Moose there in Woodland, exit 21, the Cougar exit. Shout out to you guys at the Fat Moose. Wonderful, good community, etc. Fish and chips, all you can eat Friday night. That was pretty good. Okay. So I got dinner. Then I went to the hotel. I got in the room. I was just so tired. I just laid in bed. I watched 2 episodes of Columbo. One more thing, right? Watched 2 episodes of Columbo. Then I fell asleep. About 1:45 in the morning, I wake up. Okay. It's hot. So I turn the air conditioner on and I go back to lay back down and I lay my head down. And this is what came to mind. Okay, pause. Over the last 5 years or so, you ever read a book and you got to the last couple of pages and you're just ready to get through to the end, but it's like it never seems to get there? The last 5 years or so, it's been like I've been at the last few pages of this whole story of injustice and redemption and God restoring things, but I just couldn't get to the end of the book, and I didn't know why. Like, when is this chapter over? And at 1:45 last night, I turned the air conditioner on and I laid down, and something clicked in my mind and in my spirit. It was as if the last pages had been read and the back cover of the book closed. That chapter, that story of injustice and God restoring me and all of that huge story, that story was now complete. For some reason, psychologically, spiritually, at 1:45 in the morning last night, early this morning, I got closure. The tattoo was done. I'm not saying the tattoo caused it, but I think that was a big process, a big part of that process where the tattoo story was now done of that entire situation. And now psychologically, spiritually, it was like God was saying, we're done. Next chapter, next book, excuse me. Not another chapter of that, please. Next book. I'm excited what the future holds. I don't know what it is. I believe God's going to use my story of injustice and to bring him glory and to guide people to him and to point everybody to him. And I'm excited for what that looks like. Maybe it's the Grit podcast. Maybe it's speaking. I'm already speaking in a number of places. I've spoken at the OWALI conference, the Oregon Association of Licensed Investigators, doing a training on bias investigations. That's for prosecuting prosecutorial investigators and defense investigators. I've met with a number of people who were in trouble. Okay, I've spoken at some classes over at Lewis and Clark Law School. So God is really using this for good. And so, but there's so much more I want to do. There's a bigger impact I want to have, especially kingdom-wise, right? And so, anyway, thank you for joining me on this story. The story is complete. Hey, if you want a great tattoo, I want you to reach out to Phil Delisle. He's just outside of Woodland, Washington, up north, not very far from here. But you want to reach out to him. I think it's phil.delisle.56 is his Instagram. I think I've got that right. I'll make sure I post that, but reach out to him, look at some of his work. He is amazing. You'll see. You'll see. Anyway, God bless you guys. God is good. And thank you for walking with me on this journey.